That sounds great.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of That Sounds Great with Khash and G. We're here at the Cube recording in Studio A in London, which is the home of producers. I am joined here by my amazing co-host, G. Would you like to tell us about today's episode?
I would, man. Guest? Thank you so much, guys. Welcome to the show. Another brilliant episode. Today we have an absolute amazing guest, phenomenal mixer, a friend and family member of Avid, and we love him. He's got the most amazing mixes, one of the best in the industry. Guys, let's just actually congratulate him, because on Sunday evening, our night actually, this person won 2 Grammys. I know, 2 Grammys. Guys, let's just introduce our amazing guest today, Irko. Woo woo! Woo. Hey, Irko.
What's up, guys? Thank you for having me.
It's really good to have you here, man. Obviously an honor to be speaking with you today. And thank you very much for taking the time to come in here and speak to us. But yeah, before we get started, just for some of our listeners and viewers out there, give us a little intro about yourself and who Irko is and how it all started.
For sure. My name is Irko. I'm the music industry most beloved bow tie wearing mixing engineer.
Yes.
I grew up. That's right. I grew up in Venice, Italy, but I've been in Los Angeles for a long time, and music took me around the world quite literally. I've been very fortunate to have worked with a lot of big celebrities that you may have heard of, and so chances are you have heard my mixes before.
Slightly, yeah, slight chance there, I think.
Yeah, that's true, man. So, Irko, I want to take it, actually, first of all, let's just clear it out. Is it Irko, or what's the best way to pronounce your name?
Irko,
bro? We want to get it perfect.
Yeah, it's Irko. Yeah,
Irko. There we go.
In Italian, it's pronounced like a E.
Irko.
Gotcha.
Oh, I love that, man. That's so nice. So,
right.
Irko, I want to take it kind of a little further back. So, I want to talk about kind of Italy and when you was there, and what inspired you back in the day when you were kind of growing up. Your music taste, and obviously, I guess you have a love for hip hop. How has kind of the old hip hop influenced you as well, and also kind of how did education get you to kind of be working in the US with all these big artists? And maybe tell me a little bit about your early journey.
For sure. The earliest memory that I have about all of this is definitely me as a kid, maybe 5, 10 years old, something like that, messing around with the EQs and the balance and, the little settings that any car would have in the little stereo, right? And so anytime I would get my hands on one of those, I would go and mess around with the EQ. Same thing I would do in home stereos. So, of course, every time my dad would take home a new hi-fi system for the living room, I would inevitably go there and mess with it. And, of course, he would always get mad at me.
Nice.
Of course.
So that's the earliest memory that I have about audio.
Wow.
Now, that eventually led me to this massive, I completely fell in love with hip-hop music because at the time, it was the music with the most bass. There was nothing in Europe that even came close to that big, sub-frequency and the bass and all of those, that energy that is really impactful on any kind of song, right? And so that was the connection between audio and hip-hop.
Nice.
Of course, at the time, I did not speak English, so I didn't know what most of these guys, all of them, said on their records. To me, it sounded like blah, 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 blah. I didn't know, right? But then only later I got to discover and fall in love with the entire culture, So
Wow.
that's the very, very beginning. Then from there, around my area, I come from a very small town, 40,000 people at best. There was no hip-hop, no nothing really, So in order for me to be involved in hip-hop, I had to create a hip-hop scene. So good thing that there is a very big American Air Force base nearby. So I started to interact and almost immediately in my early career with Americans that were stationed there, Army people or Air Force people rather. And of course they brought the American music culture to my town, which was, a strike of luck on its own, And then eventually, I've done a lot of projects with these guys in the military, and eventually, the business grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually, I guess here I am.
Wow. Well, I think that's a great sign for any mothers or fathers out there who have children. If you find them playing with the knobs on the radio, it's a good sign they'll be an award-winning engineer at some point.
Yeah, but I can vouch for the whole thing about kind of annoying your parents, because I used to do it in the car. I remember like the
Yeah.
small little EQ, and it was always like was it treble and bass?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, Dad, this one is obviously like, oh, this makes it sound, wow, that's like a thumpy bass. So
It's weird because it makes you feel like you're some kind of like a scientist or something. Like you're experimenting with all these little.
I know what to do,
frequencies.
bro. But the thing is, like, the balance thing was always something that I never touched.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get it, like when I moved forward back.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, sorry. Went off
No, that's really inspiring to hear, though, man. The fact that you, like you say, you actually helped construct the hip hop scene in certain ways. That's really, you're a pioneer in many ways, I guess.
Yeah.
What would you say was like your first big break, like in the industry?
In 2006, when I flew back from New York after being there for about 3 weeks, and that's when I got my first multi-platinum award
Wow.
for working on a Jay-Z record. That was
Wow.
definitely the big international and US-based big break. That was the first
Wow.
one for sure.
So how?
And then after that, I often say that a lot of doors started to open up. It wasn't like that, and it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get you to do this and that. It wasn't. But the no's that I used to get before were just slightly less.
Nice.
Ah.
Nice.
It was a little
So,
bit easier.
so how did that come about then, working with Jay-Z in that project?
So let's start about 10 years prior to 2006. About 10 years. At that point, it's a little all foggy. It's been a long time.
Right. Sure.
But for the most part, this is what happened. This is the MySpace era.
Oh.
Wow.
During which I had
Best friend
one
Tom.
of my guys on. Yeah, you know how we gotta go way back.
Yeah, where online kind of streaming and stuff kind of pretty
Well,
much
of course,
came from,
of
man.
course,
It's
yeah.
a big factor of today's kind of music. And,
Playing songs on your profiles.
oh man, I remember that.
That's correct. So speaking of the profile, one of my top 10 or however many I had was this guy B Money, which I owe him a major thank you every time I talk about this, because with him I had mixed so many records while he was in Japan. He eventually moved to New York, and he decided that whenever he was gonna place a track, the track would also come with an Irko mix as a package,
Nice.
as a duo, right? And he just started bugging me about going to New York and do stuff with him in real life. And of course, it was difficult. At the time, I had no money. I just had opened Studio Beat 2, which is funny now. You see over here, there's a 3.
Wow.
Time flies, right? And of course, I was broke. I had no money, no nothing. And then I just decided to go to New York and do this. And really, the goal for my trip was not even, it didn't really have much to do with doing sessions, but it had a lot more to do with finding out how big recording studios were managed and how to improve my business back in Italy, right? And yeah, I still did some sessions here and there, and one of them ended up being track 1 of Kingdom Come.
Wow.
In
Wow.
2006, that was Jay-Z's album. And of course, that changed everything. So even though my contribution to that album was smaller, I mean, at the time, I was doing all kinds of albums. I was recording, editing, mixing, mastering. I was doing all kinds of stuff. So my contribution to that particular project was pretty much small, But yet, I had the stamp of approval of a guy of that magnitude, and of course, that changed everything.
So I had to put on
Wow.
a little smirk there because he just casually dropped the fact that one of those projects was the song with
Oh,
Jay-Z.
man.
It's just so casual.
I mean, it's crazy. Like, it's just always interesting to know where people's journeys started from and how remarkable it is. But also, like, we always see the glamorous side now, but also the struggle of it. And as you said, like, you've risked it all to move to New York. I think that's like,
Yeah, that's bold.
a lot of people wouldn't want to do that, or they'd be scared, right? So kind of what was I just want to take it back to that moment, but like, how was you feeling? Obviously, you're scared. You're a bit like, wow, it's a risk, right? And obviously the feeling that you would have had at the time, you're on the plane, you're going to New York, that would have been just insane.
This is a very, very typical situation in which you don't know what you don't know.
True.
So
Yeah.
that's exactly it. Only a 20-something will go and do, you know what? I'm going to go to the other side of the planet and see what happens, make a career out of music when I wear bow ties. Like, wait, what?
Love it.
Only a 20 years old would do that.
That's quite the
And
dream.
In fact, looking back, it's like, what the hell was I thinking? I'm glad it worked out, but
Sure, yeah.
wow, right?
Yes. It's
Wow.
definitely a very brave risk to be taken there. But no, obviously it's worked out well, and you'll be thanking yourself right now, I'm sure. So obviously,
Yeah.
obviously we spoke about Jay-Z there, but what was your first interaction with Kanye like, and how did that come about? Because I know you guys have known each other for over a decade now, right?
Yeah. This was maybe 3-4 years after that. basically again through like the snowball effect of doing one project that leads to the next one and to the next one and to the next one. This is what happened. Basically, the producer 88 Keys had an album coming out of his own, and Kanye executive produced that album, and he was in one of the songs too. So that's how the connection happened, and I've been again mixing for 88 Keys for well over a decade at this point, and he was of course involved in Donda also. So it's a family affair that continues to grow and continues over decades, and that's true for a lot of my clients. By the way, I've been working with a lot of my clients for a long time.
Wow. I love that. I mean, it kind of leads me on to the question I was going to ask, actually. But so obviously, you've been working with Kanye and obviously some great names out there. But specifically, I want to talk a little bit about Ye. But I want to talk about Kanye and, was there a special moment or a specific moment kind of early when you realized like how much faith like someone like Kanye had in you to mix the record? Because, what is the process as like how much are you involved in like the planning of it? But also just like, you would have known like, wow, he trusts you a lot, which is a massive thing, right?
Yeah, totally. So I can tell you this, there's usually two very extreme opposites of the situation in a mixing session, right? Either you have a producer or artist or a client that's super hands-on and they want to have a say-so in every little detail, or you have the opposite of that when you have a producer or artist that says, you know what, I'm not a mixer, make it sound the way you feel like it should. Yeah. And so those are the two opposites. With Kanye, he's a little bit of both in the sense that he had very clear vision on the treatment of his vocal. And by the way, this has never changed over the years. He wanted very dry vocals, not a lot of effects, not a very poppy approach, right?
Right.
But then on the other hand of that, zero indications when it comes to the music, or almost zero. And so it's like this duality of he wants to be very specific about some aspects of his vocal, but then some other aspects of the mix which are arguably more not important but heavier on the fate of the song or the mix rather.
Are you?
And with that, I had complete freedom of doing whatever I wanted to do.
Wow. So when you talk about his
it's a little bit.
Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say it's a little bit of a duality kind of thing. With some things he's very precise.
Right, yeah.
Some other things, it's totally up to me.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the vocals there, do you mean like the lead vocals, the ad-libs, or just in general, like his vocals he likes a certain way?
Yeah, just general. Just generally speaking. He doesn't like a lot of reverb or effects or delays. Generally speaking, of course, it's always wrong to speak about generalities like that, especially for an album that's that long, by the way.
I mean,
but for the most part, yeah.
I was also going to touch on that as well, because like a lot of like the mixes that I hear, right, or on Kanye, it's so like, for me personally, it feels very like cinematic and open and just so kind of like everything is crisp. Whereas if I zone into one instrument, I can really pick it up and I'm like, wow, that sounds like, if I hear the snare, I'm like, oh my God, that snare is so perfect. Or like the kick, I can really zone in. And a lot of other stuff, you can't actually do that because obviously certain people mix certain way. But I can hear that about the, especially like Donda, everything just sounded so perfect. I remember saying it to you actually, Irko, as well. I was like, dude, this just sounded like my dad heard it, dude. I was telling Irko about this last time. Like my dad heard it and he doesn't really pick up music like that. And he was like, wow, this sounds great.
Yeah,
sounds great.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
But yeah, no.
Thank you.
That's a great point.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
you're describing a great mix.
Nice, like it.
Goes hand in hand. So yeah, just speaking to that, I mean, obviously, Kanye West in general is quite an experimental guy. Like he always tries to push the boundaries of music, right? And his sound is always, it seems like it's always evolving, right? There's, every album is like an evolved Kanye to the next sort of sound that he's trying to portray. So as an engineer, how important is it to be able to adapt your mixing style to help achieve that sound that artist is trying to portray?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, but I like to honor and respect their vision that, especially with an album, with an artist like Kanye, Donda being the 10th album, there's plenty of material out there that defines his sound, right? So I don't want to reinvent that. Now, of course, I'm going to put the Irko touch, I'm going to put the bow tie on this mix.
Jeez.
Love it.
But I don't want to recreate something that has been established and works already, which is why, of course, I always follow directions of the producer and whoever has the artistic reins of the situation, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But of course, that doesn't mean that I just do whatever the artist has done before. I will definitely put my own touch to it. And my own touch is all over Donda. Like, there's so many things that I've done that you don't really hear in other Ye's albums.
Right.
That I wanted to make sure that I put my imprint on it.
Right.
On Jail, for example, if you hear that mix, you'll hear the guitars do this. They alternate left to right.
Wow.
That's a very typical Irko thing that I do very often.
Wow.
On Hurricane, the music part of the song starts in mono, and the weekend vocals in the stereo, and then as the beat drops, everything else opens in the stereo. That's another trick that I do very often.
Yeah, and there's
a lot of things.
And those are just 2 little tracks that won Grammys, nothing, no big deal or anything.
Nice. No, but
just so happened that I got 2 Grammys.
Yeah, it just happened to be the case.
I mean, dude, like I love when someone like when you hear a mix and it just goes above and beyond. It's so different. It's so different to if there was a book, it's gone against that book. And that's kind of what I love about your mixes, is that you can do what you like, but it just sounds spot on. Because there's never a right and wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that, but I wanted to ask you just, so you said the bow tie, you added your bow tie touch. I know you said about the stereo and the mono stuff, but what else would you say is like the Irko bow tie touch on a mix?
It would definitely be defined by the deep low end. I'm a super bass guy, so that's pretty evident in all my mixes.
Love it.
If you play any of my mixes, they usually have substantially more low end than anything else.
Wow.
That will be comparable by playlisting or DJ sets, right?
Mm.
And that's coming from my history of knowing how important it is to have your song stack up to the competition. It is a race we're racing, and so I want to make sure that we have as much ammunition, as much power, as much energy as possible be given to the track, so that we are competitive. So that's definitely the first signature. The second one will be it probably will be the stereo positioning. I'm big on placing things in different spots in the spectrum, and not only by means of the producer setting the hi-hat in this area, right? I will move it around. I will try to enhance it if possible. Of course, still being respectful to the vision of the whole song, So those 2 things are the first ones that come to mind.
Nice.
For signatures.
So
yeah.
Similar kind of, actually, what you just kind of explained there was a little bit of like the Atmos stuff there as well, right? It's kind of like playing in space and moving the instruments around. Have you ever had a go at Atmos, Irko?
Yes, I have. Not extensively, but yes, I have.
Wow. Nice.
Cool. So I guess all of that experience in the bass and stuff, it stems from you playing with those little bass tiles when you were a little kid.
You know it. If you ask around people from my hometown, they'll tell you stories about my car with the massive sub.
Oh, man.
Wow.
I would
it's
love...
It's a well-known established fact, yeah.
Dude, can we just make it... I didn't even mention, we introduced Irko, but we got to introduce your car as well. Irko, what car do you have, bro? Let's just...
It depends on the day.
Oh,
but for the most part,
love it.
Yeah. For the most part, you would see me drive around the 1981 DeLorean. That's my baby right there. Or a
Classic.
1965 Cadillac DeVille.
Classic.
20-foot long boat.
Man.
Nice.
So I only drive old cars. So if you see an old car around LA, which there's a lot of, chances are you might see it.
Yeah, if we can spot the bow tie inside the little driver's seat there, we know who it is.
Oh yeah, and actually on bow ties, Irko, dude, we love your bow ties, by the way, here at Avid. So I just want to ask you a big question. How many bow ties do you have?
I have 300, just about 300. Most of them are kind of like this one, where it's like a interesting material. This one particularly is made of wood. But I have ceramic ones, glass ones, 3D printed, fish leather. I got all kinds of concrete ones, stone ones. I have all kinds of things. But then I also have the classic ones, and also have a bunch that are in need of power. Battery operated ones that light up, that move.
Oh,
You
nice.
name it, I got it, man. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm kind of known in the world of
Bow ties.
Wow.
Love it.
You know what, Irko? We've had a flashing cube going on here, but we couldn't interrupt that story. I
was gonna say,
I want to hear
that was
more
too
about
good.
that, but it is now the time of the show where we do what's called the album interlude. Essentially, what that means is, we're going to be splitting some questions between myself and G here. We'll ask some silly questions as well as some audio-related questions, and see how many you can answer in 60 seconds. How does that sound?
Let's go.
Let's go.
Nice.
Okay, so without further ado,
Start
the
the timer.
timer starts now. Pizza or burger?
Pizza for sure.
Pizza, of course.
All right. Stock plugins or third-party plugins?
Both. I can choose.
Fair
I
enough.
need both.
Fair enough. Favorite holiday destination?
That would be home.
Venice.
My mom's
Venice.
house.
Of course.
Ooh, analog or digital?
Oh, digital for sure.
Ooh, are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
Nice. Favorite mix of yours?
The last one I've done yesterday.
Oh, wow. Favorite studio beverage?
Tea with honey and lemon.
Ooh,
It's a good choice.
Tracking or mixing?
Mixing all day.
This is a really important one. Normal tie or bow tie?
Of course, both sides.
Nice. And favorite plugin ever made that you love?
I don't know.
Oh, that's it.
Let's go lo-fi.
Oh,
Wow.
lovely. Love
There
a bit of
we go.
lo-fi. On your bass, right? Of course. Or everything.
No, of course.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be a Grinch here and say that was after the alarm went. I'm sorry, we're
Oh,
not
does
we're
that
not
not
counting
count?
that one.
Ah,
We're not counting that one.
I'm actually excited to see how many we tally up overall. Though.
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
so good to see.
Yeah, we're gonna create like a leaderboard and
Yeah.
see how many people can
So,
answer. But
that was
sorry,
really cool.
before we get into anything else, just going back to your bow tie real quick, we're gonna have to speak to our manager and see if we can sort you out a purple Avid one, so you can
Ooh.
so you can rock at some point.
That would be so cool, man. That would be amazing. That'd be really cool. What's your most like fun? Sorry, I'm going back to the bow ties again. But what's your most funkiest bow tie that you have?
Interesting.
Ah, man, there's so many. Probably, actually, I got two that I made out of concrete when
Wow.
the guys were
What?
pouring the concrete of this building. Can you imagine,
Oh
like
my-
a truck with the trunk like that? You create like 15 people around. I'm like, hold on, everybody, stop right there.
Oh wow.
And I walk in front of the trunk with my little ice cream scoop and scoop up the concrete,
joking.
wet concrete
Oh my God.
into a box that I made with a negative shape of a bow tie.
Oh.
And then I
He
put.
was ready.
I
Bro,
put-
that's so good.
I was ready. I was totally ready. Yeah. I put the little metal pin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Opened up like it was rebar. And then I let it cure.
Oh.
And now I got the freaking bow tie. Yeah, you can see that's the one.
Wow.
That's one with a story.
That
right
is
there.
incredible.
Dude.
I love how ready he was for that moment. Like he's been
Wow.
waiting for that
yeah.
opportunity.
How
He's all
creative are you, Irko?
I
That's
know.
insane. I would never
That's
think
true.
of that, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the reaction of the guys around you? They must have been like, "Whoa."
Oh
what's going
yeah,
on?
they already know I'm a nut, but by that time it's like, all right, okay, this is it.
You're a
Love
story of
creative
my
nut.
life.
You're a creative nut.
Creative
That's what
nut.
matters.
Um,
Yeah, that's what matters.
Cool. So yeah, I'm gonna take it a little bit back now from the bow ties. Obviously, guys, again, I want to say a massive congratulations to the Grammys the other day, and obviously
Round
Irko,
of applause. Round of
Woo!
applause, please, audience.
Thank you.
2
Audience, round of
Grammys.
applause.
It was Hurricane and Jail.
Two of my favorite tracks as
Oh,
well.
they were hands down the whole album, but them 2 tracks really were just
Unreal.
amazing. One of my favorite tracks. Do you still kind of pinch yourself kind of for the moments when you're mixing tracks? And obviously as a mixer and as a great mixer working with the greats, you kind of know that this is going to be like, do you know that it's going to be obviously a Grammy winning track, but also a hit record? Like, how do you know that?
Yeah,
That feeling there is like, obviously only you know that, right?
Yeah, especially
So
with
it's-
like working with big artists, right?
Yeah.
Like having Kanye and The Weeknd and Lil Baby on a track. That must be
Oof.
insane.
Yeah. It's surreal sometimes. Just seeing the names on the tracks on Pro Tools, and it's like, oh, that's looks like
Yeah.
just like any other artist,
Yeah.
and yet that's not like any other artist.
Yeah.
So there's definitely it's there's a little bit of shock moment, kind of like when you throw yourself in the pool the first time, but then shortly after that it becomes normal, right? It's
Yeah.
the same thing here.
It's just another
And, like
voice.
eventually, yeah, of course I'm very happy to be involved in big projects, but there's really no difference to me if the song is with big talent or not, because at the time at which I'm involved in the song has not been heard by anyone before it gets published. So there's really no difference between the song of a big celebrity or one that's not. And honestly, I don't really care that much. I mean, of course, it's nice to work with bigger artists, but at the end of the day, I'm called in to perfect the sound and make it as best as possible, and that's really it. And as long as I like the song and I can commit my heart to it, my name, of course, but even more so my energy,
Right.
Wow.
you know, I'm here to make it as best as possible, and hopefully a billion people will hear it. In the case of Donda too.
That's mad. So in terms of working with like features, is there a process where, you know, how involved do they get on their sound? Do they have their, you know, engineer mix their vocals before it's sent to you, and then you have to sort of work with that, or like how involved do they get?
No, most of the times I get the raw files and then I do my own thing, but not all the time. With some artists, they like, you know, if they design their chain and their sound with their own engineer, sometimes that's what they send, and I'm very happy to respect that. Again, like I was saying earlier, you know, so I want to make sure that they get what they envision to begin with. Now, that's not always the case. So for the time at which I get completely raw tracks, then I will, again, respect their vision from years before, but still put my own spin onto it. And then sometimes the artists and the producers are involved in the mix. Sometimes they're not. It really depends on the situation. And then, you know, usually the bigger the projects the bigger the projects, the more people are involved. And therefore, it's a little bit, it depends on the situation. Sometimes there's more people involved. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's more managers involved than others. Sometimes people, you know, some of these artists don't even know who I am, I'm sure, you know, so it's a mixed bag.
Wow, that's really interesting to hear. Like I always thought that, you know, how involved do people get with featured guests, and obviously, as you say, I suppose it depends on the track and the artists are involved in. But is there ever times where there's like discrepancies in terms of some of the plugins and stuff that certain people use, and like how do you adapt to those situations?
Yeah, it depends on again, it's a case by case thing, but yeah, sometimes it does happen that I open up a session and it's a mess, or plugins are missing, or there's discrepancies between systems. You know, Pro Tools sessions can come from any system, so who knows, you know, what's the situation, you know. But for the most part, I have just about any plugin, so it's simple to kind of like figure it out. If not, you know, we got 4 rigs here, so between one and the other, we will figure it out, you know, between me and my chief house engineer, or even just communicating with the original recording engineer that recorded the track.
Nice. Well, and then also, Irko, I want to ask you, so obviously we've known you for quite a while now, which is awesome, bro, but I've always seen you as like a personality, and like you stand out, right, which is amazing. You've got an awesome smile, and at the Grammys, bro, for me personally, I think you had a sick suit, dude. That was so cool. You looked the part, man.
Not to mention the bow ties.
And the bow tie, of course. Yeah. Looks great, bro. So props to you, man. That was amazing.
Thank you.
But also, like, to the kind of new gen out there, right? And obviously the guys that are getting started, what can you tell them about kind of being a brand? And obviously as an engineer these days, obviously it's quite the forefront. You're quite, you know, make or break, right? So how is it kind of dealing with pressures, dealing with stress, and also still trying to portray a brand and show a brand?
I think that the key way to look at all of these things is to be true and correct. And, you know, the best way to advertise what you do is through your work. And the best thing to do is just be honest with everything, you know, just be very clear about what it is you do and what you like and what you don't like, you know. And obviously when you do that, you do set boundaries that will also reduce some of your potential clientele, right? But that's fine, you know. It's all about letting the world know who you are and what you're about. If you end up building this online persona or this, you know, fake, you know, presence that's only online, or, you know, faking the funk, people smell that, you know. It's not. I don't think it's a smart thing to do, you know. Just be yourself and rock it out, you know, with your quirks. I mean, look, a dude with a bow tie and weird cars, with an accent, ends up doing a lot of hip hop stuff. That's very strange, you know. That's very unusual. Yeah. And So just be you. You know, everyone else is taken
Yeah.
anyway. So you know, just promote what you do, and eventually the world is gonna hear about you. You know, I would always suggest to just be very honest and organic.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of trends that people often try to jump on, right? Like, you know, whatever's popular at the time, they'll try and emulate it in their own way just to make it. Like I said, it's make or break a lot of the times with these not just you know, artists, engineers as well, right? So you know, one thing is about networking, but the other thing, like you said, is having a presence and having an identity. And certain people will try and put on a certain identity that just isn't true to themselves.
Yeah.
And that often, like you said, gets sniffed out fairly quickly because there's only a certain number of days or weeks or months that you can keep up that personality up for, right?
Yeah.
Eventually you're gonna, you know, have to be yourself. So
And you need to be comfortable. You know, speaking about the suit that G was talking about, the suit can be very good looking, but if it's not comfortable, you're not.
you felt
gonna
$1
wear
million
the thing.
that
It
day.
needs to be fitted.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be fitted to you, to your personality, and be comfortable with what you do.
No,
you
that's
know?
really good to hear.
That is amazing, man.
So, sorry, I just want to take it quickly back to Donda real quick because there was a question that I wanted to ask you about. Obviously, Kanye did a very, I want to say, controversial thing in terms of creating the stem player. Just wanted to know your thoughts about it and how that sort of changed the way you mix tracks for that album.
It did not change at all. But what happened is he put me in contact with the engineer that put together the whole thing, and then we discussed, you know, how to convey, you know, for me to generate these stems and the level at which to put them, because when you mess around with the stuff, you need to have a certain headroom so that you don't lift and stuff like that. But eventually, once we set up the, you know, the standard for the volume at which I was gonna print the stems, that was it. It was very straightforward. I just created 4 tracks out of each song, which was kind of tricky because some songs, for example, did not have a bass. Some songs did not have drums. So for those, there's only maybe 3 or 2, depending on the situation. But that was it. It was very simple. Eventually, the only complicated thing was that we had, you know, an album deadline approaching, and we also had a player deadline approaching. But whatever was going to end up being on the album had to be mirrored into the player. And some things, you know, some songs have been approved before others. So there were some times at which I had, you know, half the album approved and ready to go for release, but then the other half was not. And therefore I had, you know, the guys from the stem player crew barking at me like, hey, we need the files. But I'm like, yeah, but they're not approved. So you know, so it was a little bit of a thing. But technically speaking, it was very straightforward. In fact, if you put together those 4 stems out of Donda, they generate the exact mix that's on the
Yeah, it
album.
sounds straightforward, but I'd imagine it actually took quite a long time to get all of them exported and stuff, right? Because of how long.
Yeah, a lot of print time for sure. And we gotta thank my guy Steph, because he did a lot
Shout
of
out
that.
Steph.
Shout out Steph. Did you have a lot of sleepless nights when you were working on kind of Donda and, you know, did you know, I'm guessing you like working during the night as well, Irko?
I hate working during the
He's
night.
an early bird. We've
don't.
been through this.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, but especially at the very end,
Wow.
sleep was not a concept that was really thought of
Ah.
during weeks.
It's
When-
It was not really a thing.
And when did you know? I mean, I know the deadline, right? And I want to kind of go over like, how do you know something is finished?
$1 million
Hard question. Yeah, literally.
Oh, for me, I have a whole procedure that I go through every
That
single
helps.
mix. So by the time I'm happy with the sound and I'm convinced that this is the mix, I had the mix running through a number of different tests, both digital and analog, or organic rather, meaning the digital ones are coming from Pro Tools, and all of my tests are all in terms of listening environment. So as you can see, the small speaker, the large speakers and headphones and earbuds and car tests and all of that stuff. So those are all the organic tests. And once all of these are checked off and I'm happy with the sound of each, now mind you, there's a major difference between listening to the mix on these big speakers than it is on these little guys, right? Major difference. But if I'm happy with the sound of both, then more likely than not, I'm good to go. Mind you, I'm speaking in a room that's fully treated. It sounds incredible in here. So of course I have a huge advantage compared to listening to music in a space that's not treated, right? But once I go through all those tests, and that takes some time, you know, it's probably like a half a day easy after they to go through all the tests. Now I know that all the checks that I had to do have been made, and I'm happy with it, and that's the time at which I share the mix. Now that doesn't mean the mix is gonna be that way. That's just version
Right.
one. Of course, sometimes the client will say, "Hey, amazing, printed. That's the way to do it." Some other times I gotta do 100 revisions and change it.
Wow.
You know, it really depends. But that's how I know when the mix
Yeah,
happens. A lot of tests.
I've always thought about the idea of, obviously, you know, you're talking about tests there. One of the most important tests, in my opinion, is the car test,
Oh,
right?
of
Because a lot of the
course,
times, you
yeah.
know, you're showing your friends some new music in your car, and you really want them to like it. So, you know, it's really important that it sounds great. So does a Grammy-winning engineer go into their car and just blast out their songs for a few minutes in there? Does that happen on a daily?
Not only it happens on a daily, but I even have a section on my vlogs on my YouTube about that. So yes,
Wow.
absolutely,
Nice.
absolutely.
And actually, yeah, I mean,
There's a great benefit. Yeah, there's a great benefit from doing a car test. Not only because you're for the first time off of one side, right?
Yeah.
You're no longer in
Yeah,
the middle.
exactly.
You're in the middle when you're listening to it on
Exactly.
earbuds. You're in the middle in the studio. For the first time, you're off the side. Then you're in the real world. You got noise. You know, I like to do it when I drive also, so windows somewhat down, and you know, you got noise covering, you know, and making things more realistic, you know, because no one will listen to the mix here. You know, they will listen to it in the real world. So it's very important to have their point of
Could you imagine?
perspective. So yeah, I do it.
Could you
I do it
imagine
all.
Irko just driving with his window down and you're hearing
In a
an
DeLorean.
exclusive taste of the new
Oh, it's
Kanye
like, whoa,
album?
did I
Just
just
like,
hear-
wait, was that Kanye, guys?
wait, that was mixed by Irko. Yeah. Two guys in LA just saying, wow.
That has happened
Oh.
in the parking lot of the studio. I'm listening to some stuff, and fans come up like,
No way.
"Hey, I've never heard the song." I'm like, "Yeah, because it's not ready
They're
yet."
on Shazam just trying to
Yeah.
like.
But it will
Oh
be
my
soon.
God, yeah. No, but also,
That has happened.
dude, you're for those who kind of are interested in studio builds as well, your channel, right, has a lot of cool stuff about how to build a studio. I find it so interesting because behind you we can see this awesome studio, and obviously, dude, I've said it a million times, that ceiling,
The Rolls Royce.
yeah, that needs to be in every car, every ceiling in my house one day, and yeah. But yeah, no, and obviously Irko, as beautiful as it is, it obviously took a lot of work, and obviously it takes a long time as well, right? But if people do want to kind of look into that, they can go into your channel, right, and have a glimpse.
Yes, I have about 40 episodes of how I turn what used to be a parking lot, this used to be a
Wow.
parking lot, into this. A beautiful studio, one of the best sounding room ever. And I'm not saying that because I mean it and it's my place. It's the other way around. I made it to be the best
Wow.
sounding room because I needed to be working in here. And yeah, it's amazing. Everything where I'm sitting under, next to, and on was designed, engineered, created, assembled in Italy,
Wow.
then put on a boat. It traveled across oceans and in a country,
What?
Panama, and then it got delivered here in LA and then assembled by the same guys that made it. So yeah, it was
Oh,
different,
no
way.
a different experience, definitely interesting. So if you're into that kind of construction stuff or
course.
whatever, definitely go to my YouTube and watch the
Wow.
whole
Of course.
development, because there's and that's where you will see also the car test videos I was
Oh,
talking
I need
about.
to, yeah, I
Nice.
need to go and
Yeah.
brush up on my Irko education.
Yeah, man.
So-
Well, we'll definitely make sure we'll leave some links for our viewers and listeners to go and check that out. But Irko, we just want to say a huge thank you for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute honor speaking to you, and you know we've been waiting for a moment like this to actually talk to you about all the incredible stuff you've achieved, and most recently, obviously, winning those Grammys. So thank you for coming here today, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much, Irko.
Thank you for having me.
Also, just want to kind of say the same words and echo Khash's thoughts there. Congratulations for all of Avid, and you've been an amazing guest, man. And we just love doing cool stuff with you. You're one of the coolest guys and one of the best engineers in the game. So we want to thank you. And yeah,
We'll work on that Avid bow tie thing as well. We'll see what we can do.
nice.
Thank you very much, guys. I definitely appreciate being involved with you guys. And G, you already know, I told you a million times,
Thank you,
I've been using Pro Tools every day of my life for the past 20 plus years. So when I hear music, I see Pro Tools. Pro Tools is an extension of my hands
That's
and my
awesome.
thoughts. So
Love it.
anything that you guys may need from me, you already know I'm here for you. And same thing goes with the studio. If you want to come to LA, let's do
Thank
something
you.
here.
I can't
Thank you
wait,
very
dude.
much, yeah.
Thank you so much. Well,
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up now, everyone that's listening and viewing. Thank you for tuning in today. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. And if you are listening to us on your preferred streaming platform for podcasts, make sure you tune in for the next episode where we'll have another special guest on the show. Thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, guys. Take care.